Good evening, you're watching RTD's English News Edition. The top stories. The Somali president has left the capital today after a 48 hours visit. In all international news, Kurdistan proposes Baghdad to freeze results from independence referendum. Those were the top stories, and thanks for joining us. The President of the Republic, His Excellency Ismail Omar Guelleh, addressed today, Wednesday, a message of congratulation to his Chinese counterpart, Mr. Xi Jinping, renewed yesterday, Tuesday, at the head of the Chinese Communist Party, CCP. The renewed confidence you have come to enjoy in its most direct consequences, the continuation of your action in the Chinese Supreme Judiciary reflect the fact that your compatriots long wished to evolve under your leadership, wrote President Guelleh. I'm all the more proud to convey to you my warm congratulations that your country has chosen in the context of its recent General Congress to shortlist you with the most illustrious leaders it has ever had. He continued, there is no doubt that China today is a model of economic success for all states that, like Djibouti, aspire to sustainable development, said the Djiboutian president, who has not missed reiterating to Mr. Xi Jinping the determination of his government and people to preserve and promote strategic and win-win partnership with the Chinese-friendly nation. And this victory, key members of China's Communist Party were determined at the National Congress, which is held every 5 years, and concluded this week. On Wednesday, members of the party's highest body, the Politburo Standing Committee, were announced, with President Xi Jinping returning for a second 5-term as Party General Secretary. Premier Li Qiang also remains in place as his number 2, while the other 5 members are all newcomers, taking the place of those who retired due to unwritten age limits. The head of the Communist Party since 2012 and state president since 2013, Xi has established himself as a fervent nationalist and Chinese most powerful leader since Deng Xiaoping in the 1980s. Xi, 64, has worked to reassert the party's influence across all sectors, including in schools, the media, and the private businesses that are driving Chinese economy. The son of communist elder Xi lived in a cave and performed hard labor during the Cultural Revolution before graduating from prestigious Tsinghua University, being appointed to a series of increasingly prominent provincial posts. And coming back to the national news, Somali President Mohamed Abdullahi Mohamed Farmajo left the capital this morning after a 48-hour working visit to Djibouti. This visit was mainly devoted to the security problems in Somalia in order to annihilate a possible reconstruction of the terrorist actions of the Islamic movement Al-Shabaab, and this soon after the terrible attack which took place on October 14th in Mogadishu, in which makes about 358 dead, about 50 missing, and nearly 300 wounded. President Mohamed Abdullahi Farmajo had a series of talks with the head of state, Ismail Omar Guelleh, and the political authorities. The Somali president has embarked on a regional tour of the IGAD member countries and has been hiring troops into AMISOM, the African peacekeeping force, to secure and stabilize the situation in Somalia, and this force operates under the mandate of United Nations. It contributes to the rebirth of Somali state institutions through its area and the strengthening of security services, as well as the training of police and armed forces. And shortly after his departure from Djibouti, the Somali president granted an interview to the RTD. The President Farmajo thanked President Guelleh for his welcome. He recalled the colossal efforts that the Republic of Djibouti provides to support their Somali brothers and sisters. Djibouti has always been listening to the Somali people, he said. The sending of a medical team shortly after the terrible attack of October 14 is the perfect illustration. He continued, the wounded requiring intensive care were evacuated to Djibouti, as much as Turkey, Sudan, and Kenya. Many countries have expressed solidarity with the Somali people, but few have acted, said the president. And finally, he paid tribute to President Guelleh, who spares no effort to support the Somali people. Prime Minister Abdul Qadir Kamil Mohammed raised this morning to the rank of Knight of June 27 Order Mr. Izzuddin Sharaf Ali, Honorary Consul of Malaysia in Djibouti, owner of the restaurant Santal, and also Director of the Import-Export Company. This distinction was awarded to him for the commendable services rendered to the nation for decades. The lucky recipient is a Djiboutian of Indian origin. He is active in several economic sectors and employs more than 30 people. He is also known for his charity and great generosity toward the poor. Mr. Izzuddin has worked extensively to promote relations between Djibouti and India on the one hand and Djibouti and Malaysia on the other. He has thus worked for the grant of scholarship to Djiboutian students who pursue their university courses in India or Malaysia. The Prime Minister extended his heartfelt congratulations to the lucky recipient. He emphasized that this distinction is well deserved. According to the Prime Minister, this distinction honors anyone who is actively engaged to support the development of the country. Men who work deserve our recognition. He concluded. Director of National Security, Mr. Hassan Saeed Khairat, took part in the award-winning ceremony as well. A parliamentary mission led by the President of the National Assembly, Muhammad Ali Hamad, composed of the members of the National Assembly Bureau, the Secretary General, as well as senior executive of the Cabinet, went to the headquarters of Rtd region to formally launch the work of the Parliamentary Information Mission on the decentralization process, which will continue in all the interior regions. On his arrival, the chief place of Rtd, the parliamentary delegation, was welcomed by the prefect of the region, Mr. Abdullah Duraroki, and the president of the regional council, Al-Mubo, as well as the notables and the youth of this region. In the first place, the parliamentary delegation met the prefect of the region of Rtd before launching the parliamentary caravan. The objectives of this fact-finding mission are multiple. On the one hand, they will enable MPs to collect the necessary information in order to make a serious assessment of modalities of transfers of skills and human and materials resources. And on the other hand, this information mission will allow parliamentarians to intervene on three axes, namely meeting between local elected representatives and parliamentarians, governance by the participation of local population, and finally the establishment of a communication mechanism with local stakeholders. In his address, the Speaker of the National Assembly explained that the process of transferring skills and resources is the most complex operation of the decentralization process. However, this mission will enable MPs to measure the specific difficulties and obstacles, said the President of the National Assembly, faced by local elected representatives in carrying out their taxes, so that advocacy is done and are so corrected for efficient and effective implementation of the taxes. The 10th meeting of the Joint Ministerial Committee between the Republic of Djibouti and the Federal Republic of Ethiopia, which will be held on Friday, October 27 in Addis Ababa. A preparatory meeting of the Ministerial National Committee was held on Wednesday at the conference room of the Ministry of Transport and Equipment. The discussions concerned the preparation for the commissioning of the new Djibouti-Addis Ababa Railway, and at the end of October 2017 were present at the meeting the Minister of Equipment and Transport, with the Minister of Economy and Finance, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, International Cooperation, the Minister of the Interior, the Secretary General of the Government, the President of the Port and Free Zones Authority, the Director General of the Djiboutian Railway Company, and other managing directors such as the EDD and the Customs of the Police and the Multipurpose Forces. Let's recall that the materialization of this great railway project is the result of a great political will of His Excellency Ismail Omar Guelleh, President of the Republic of Djibouti, and His Excellency Haile Mariam Desalegn, Prime Minister of the Democratic and Federal Republic of Ethiopia, whose objective is to integrate the communication infrastructure, roads and railways in order to meet the increasing needs of economic exchanges of our peoples. After completing his journey in the 5 regions of the interior as part of the National Consultation on Health, the Minister of Health, Dr. Jami Omyokie, turned to the civil society of the communes of Bul'as and Vazdika. Indeed, it was in the meeting room of the People's Palace held yesterday a conference debate between the Minister of Health and representative of the civil society of the inhabitants of the capital. accompanied by the Secretary of State for Solidarity, Muna Osman, and as a strong delegation was greeted at the People's Palace by the Mayor of Djibouti, Mrs. Fatuma Wali, the President of the Commune of Bul'as, as well as the President of Rastika Commune, Ibrahim Said Badul. All were invited to take part in the discussions that are scheduled on the theme of health, and as representative of civil society of municipalities of Bul'as and Rastika. As in the interior regions, the representatives of civil society did not depart from the role, since they were widely expressed and asked a multiple of questions. In a presentation made during the meeting, Dr. Muhammad Osman, a pulmonologist, spoke about new acquisitions and the progress made by Dr. Shakib, a tuberculosis center in the fight against tuberculosis in Djibouti. In her speech, the Mayor of Djibouti, Mrs. Fatuma Wale, recalled the themes of the debate while explicitly asking stakeholders to participate actively in the debate. According to Fatuma Wale, Mayor of Djibouti, such an inclusive debate allows for broad citizen participation and in-depth reflection on social policy and health priorities. Secretary of State for Solidarity, Mrs. Muna Osman Aden, meanwhile stressed that her department stood with the Ministry of Health to support the implementation of this conference recommendations. The Secretary of State indicated that this strategy of exchanges and consultancies comes from the instructions of the Head of State, who asks us at all times to constantly involve the citizens in all the stages of the process of elaboration of a government's policy. And in his speech on the occasion, the Minister of Health, Dr. Jamal Moki, thanked the audience for the civic demonstration, which is expressed through a large and massive mobilization. He also thanked the representative of the two municipalities of Bul'as and Rastika for their enthusiastic and warm welcome. The Minister of Health has also stressed that this strategy of citizen involvement is an invaluable source of ideas that the Health Department will necessarily rely on to strengthen and modernize our country's health system. It is more efficient, more accessible and more equitable, he said. The minister also urged civil society to play its full role in supporting government policy in key areas such as health. Continuing with the national news, under the leadership of Dean Ali Abdi Farah and Dr. Jamal Mioki, a large delegation of members of the RPP Executive Committee visited the neighborhood 7 Annex to meet with committee members. This important meeting between the party's senior executives brought together no less than 200 people, all members of eight committees of the RPP annexes in the communes of Rastika and Bul'as. The main purpose of this meeting is part of the party's tradition of promoting dialogue and exchange. Information is thus shared which perpetuates an internal serene dialogue between the party's governing bodies and the members. In their interventions, the chairpersons of the RPP annexes presented the activities carried out in their respective zones of influence, highlighting the strengths, but also the zones of influence, highlighting the strengths, but also the points to be improved. The Secretary of State for Youth and Sports received this morning in his office Mr. Eric Wipper, head of the Center for Reading and Cultural Animation, CLAC. A pilot project for the implementation of the readings programs will be launched shortly. And faithful to his spoken words, the Secretary of State for Youth and Sports did not fail to express his thanks to Mr. Eric Wipper before pointing out that the CLAC project will allow many young people both in the capital and regions to have access to books and to flourish intellectually. The youth needed to speak out. The community development centers were placed to go. He continued. The CLAC program manager focused on the main reasons for his visit, which is, he says, is a validation mission to see the efforts and progress that have been made in setting up CLAC programs in the country, and as well as who can collaborate in the operation of the future center. The Director General of Population and Family, Ahmed Omar Jama, continues his tour in the interior regions to inquire about the status of filing the nationality file made with the prefecture, but also insurance conditions of the birth certificates under the jurisdiction of Regional Council. After Dikil and Ali Sabih, this Wednesday, an important delegation led by Director General of the Population went to the city of Obok, where it was warmly welcomed by the prefect of the Obok region, Hassan Dabali, and the Vice President of the Regional Council, Ahmed Ali Mohammed. Subsequently, they paid a visit to the national prefecture, and a working meeting was held where the relevant questions were discussed with the authorities concerned. To close up this edition with the international news, the Kurdistan Regional Government, in a statement early on Wednesday, offered to freeze the results of an early referendum on independence as part of an offer to defuse the crisis with the Iraqi central government in Baghdad. The statement also called for an immediate ceasefire and a halt to all military operations in the northern region. The KRG called for an open dialogue between Erbil and Baghdad based on the country's constitution. The KRG's proposition to the Iraqi government, Iraqi and world public opinion were made in order to fulfill responsibilities and obligations toward the people of Kurdistan and Iraq. The KRG added that continuing fighting will not lead any side to victory, but rather will drive the country toward desire and chaos affecting all aspects of life. And that's all for tonight's news. Thank you for joining us on RTD and have a good night.